This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
By popular demand, Place to Be Nation Wrestling returns to the Dirty South for Talk'n WCW, an episodic wrestler showcase designed to educate, evaluate, and entertain, with matches spanning the intimate stage of Techwood Studios to the heights of Space Mountain. Talk'n WCW presents the best, worst, and most surreal offerings from World Championship Wrestling. So cast your gaze to the Turnertron with hosts Jennifer Smith, Tim Capel, and Greg Phillips.
Hi, welcome to Talk'n WCW. My name is Jennifer Smith. I'm here with the Michaels to my Shawn Michaels, Tim Capel. How you doing?
I'm doing great. That's quite the callback.
Yep.
I do appreciate it.
Three people might get that. It's fine.
Exactly. That's a joke for three people. But that's okay because they are hopefully hypothetical listeners of this podcast as well. And we have to bring in our third man. What was his name? Jarrett Michaels. What's the third?
I believe it would be Jack Michaels.
Jack Michaels.
Jack Michaels. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Jack Michaels, to be traded by Greg Phillips. Greg, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Much like Hooters on a Sunday night during the Ruthless Aggression era, I'm doing fantastic. And I've got all my conspiracy theories cooking in my head, and I'm ready to go.
That's what we need on this episode, I think.
Yeah.
This is our conspiracy episode.
You know, the legend of the three Shawn Michaelses notwithstanding, we're going to be talking about someone who's not Shawn Michaels or Jack Michaels or Michaels.
We're going to be talking
someone
about the three Barry Windhams, right?
Yeah, three of his matches anyway. I think it's the same one. Although Barry Windham,
Jack Windham. Depending
on when you are watching Barry Windham at any point during his career, could seem like a different wrestler.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that. So who picked this one? This wasn't one of my picks. Was this?
I think it was your.
Was it my pick? Yeah. Wow. Like I said, great pick by me going into this episode. It's been a little while, folks. It's been a long week. No, I look. I love Barry Windham. I feel like he just sort of, and I know it's not true, but in my head anyway, and this is largely a product of kind of how I've consumed WCW over the years, where, you know, I got into it late in the lifespan of the promotion and had to kind of go in and fill in the blanks. So I've kind of watched them in reverse, I feel like, over my own lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like Barry Windham comes out of nowhere and grabs this company by the balls and, you know, makes this huge splash and then kind of quietly disappears for a while and then comes back and things really ramp up again. And, you know, you get that sort of ebb and flow, and it's because he's, you know, hopping between promotions quite a bit. But, you know, I think we came up with three matches that they're all going to be, if not peak Barry Windham, then very close to some of his finest work. So I don't know that we'll have a lot of hidden gems, so to speak, here, but definitely some matches that I greatly enjoyed going into this and rewatching some of these. One match in particular, I'm not sure I'd ever even seen, which is very surprising for me to say. But we are going to kick it off with, beginning in our chronology, match from your pick, Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
It is Clash of the Champions, the first Clash of the Champions, in fact. Oh, wow. Starting hot here. It's Total Package Lex Luger teaming with Barry Windham against the Horseman, represented by Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. This is for the NWA World Tag Team Championship. I'll just go ahead and say it. Maybe my favorite WCW tag team match ever.
Really?
But
Ever?
Ow.
yeah, it's really up there. It's really up there, and I'll get into why. But Jenny,
Okay.
why don't you walk us through this thing?
All right. Like you said, we're in Greensboro. I think you said that. Anyway, we are.
I don't think
So,
I did, but yeah, we're in
uh,
Greensboro.
so I'm assuming that.
Greensboro! Woo! North Carolina!
I'm assuming that accounts for the extremely loud crowd noise
Oh
during
my
this
god.
match.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it is. It's like, I wondered if it was real fake. Because I was like, surely they're not losing their minds, but you can see them losing their minds most of the match.
Mm-hmm.
But it's because it's Tim's favorite match in WCW, so there you go. So Luger, it just for my OCD stuff, it bugs me when teams are not wearing the same colors, and and then when on the opposite sides you have guys wearing the same color, like really really bugs me. Like y'all could have
Yeah,
talked about
that's
this.
the one that bugs me is when opponents
Yes.
are in the same color.
But as a counterpoint, it does illustrate the fact that Arn and Tully are a real tag team, and Barry and Lex are two singles guys trying to become a tag team.
That's what I was thinking as well. So
This is true.
yeah, I get it, but it still just bugs me just visually.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I pretty much know who everybody is now. Like for the most part, in wrestlers and shows, like I have a pretty good knowledge base. But a lot of like when I was just learning about this stuff, the color of the tights mattered to me in that I could figure out who was who. I don't know. It was just like how I identified people. Anyway, so Luger's wearing red and Barry's in blue. I like Barry in blue.
Very in blue.
Powder
Anyway,
with that,
yes,
right?
powder blue, sky blue, maybe. So they, Luger and Tully
Did you
lock
say
up.
baby blue?
Baby blue.
You could
Okay.
say that, yeah.
They lock up at first, and then quickly all four of them get in the ring to tie up, and Luger flattens Arn with a clothesline. Pretty quick. Like I said, crowd going nuts already. He falls out with a power slam and then a rack already, 2 minutes into the match. Pretty bold choice there. I was like, I don't know, that feels, I don't know, get your shit in, I guess, while you can, because Barry Windham's about to be in this match for a little bit. Tully scrambles to tag, and Arn goes to work on Luger's leg.
JR was great explaining that, by the way.
Yeah, he was. JR and Tony do a good job there in this match.
Yep.
Tag to Tully. Then they do a series of quick tags. They're just kind of working Lex over. Lex kicks Arn into the corner and knocks Tully down. Then manages to get his first tag over to Barry. He goes in and knocks their heads together. I always love that. A head knocking spot. The first of two that we'll get. And Barry he's so smooth. He does a lariat and a power slam on Tully, and they're just like, it's just, he glides. Like, he's just so graceful. For such a, I mean, he's tall. He's not big. Like, he's
got like a
muscular.
huge frame. You
Yeah,
know? He's
yeah.
one of those guys that he's what, like probably 6'8", 6'9", something like that. Like legitimate, and just has this huge, enormous frame.
Yeah.
Even though he's not like a body guy. To your point.
Right.
Yeah. Like a trim fit.
But it's just startling how quickly he moves and how fluid it all is.
Real light on his feet.
Yeah. He grabs a sleeper and drags Tully to the floor, chokes him a bit, and hops back in the ring while Arn goes over to cradle Tully a little bit. Tully gets back in, gets some quick shots in, but then Windham slams him off the top rope, grabs him by his neck and his balls, and just kind of tips him over to slam him. He works a quick abdominal stretch, but then Arn comes in to save Tully, gets a sweet-looking DDT on Barry, finally for 2. Arn gets a 6 spine buster for another 2, and he tries to like lock hands with Barry on top of him and just like push his shoulders into the mat, but Barry fights him off. That was a was a good spot. I like that. Arn goes to knee Barry while he's laying there, but Barry gets his knees up and escapes out of that. Tully punches Barry Windham down, gets a 2 count, sends him into the ropes, but Windham ducks him and answers with a crossbody, gets 2 for that. Tully tries to whip him again, but then they collide. Just flat out hit each other in the middle of the ring and fall down. The ref counts, but they stagger up. Tully grabs a side takedown and they grapple, but Barry bridges out, just so nice. Gets out of that, and then side suplexes the fuck out of Tully for that. Tully rolls over to tag Arn in, and then Arn starts working on Barry's arm. And the whole time Barry's just selling, like, what little offense Tully and Arn can get in on him, he sells really well. He's another cool effect of, like, how big he is just watching him tumble all around. And Dylan is pacing along that ringside, looking kind of concerned. Might be kind of worried about what's going to happen. In a great spot, Arn and Barry punch each other right in the face, and they both fall down. Arn tucks Tully in, who takes advantage and gets a nice slingshot suplex on Barry for 2, but there's a huge pop when he kicks out for that one. Punches the fuck out of Tully, and then finally staggers over to get the hot tag to Luger. He comes in. He's fresh because he hasn't done shit most of the time. Comes in with clotheslines, another knocking head spot. Tully grabs knees, legs to the kidneys when he bounces off the ropes, and then he goes down, but then he recovers and body slams Arn. All 4 of them get in the ring to brawl for a little bit. JJ gets in the corner with a chair and kind of wedges it in the corner, but it sort of backfires on him when Lex trips up Arn and sends Arn's face first into the chair. Lex rolls him up, covers him, and gets the win, and there's a huge pop because we got a new tag team champ.
Babies in the air.
Yep.
Everyone is happy. Lex Luger does a tremendous jumping celebration.
Yes, he does. He leaps in the air. Like
higher than he jumped in the match itself.
Yes. The more effort than he put in the match. Anyway, but the pace of it, and it's like 9-minute match, but it's so good. Teams are, like, even with Barry and Luger not seeming like much of a team, they both do well enough, to get the win. So that's bonding, I guess, as a team. But it was, Tully and Arn they're just wonderful to watch, especially together. And Barry he's like a giant white, like he's so white, his hair is white, like his skin's like white. He's like a wrestling giant white bear.
Watching this match and some of the other matches too, which we'll get to, just in case I forget to say it later. If I had to like compare him to someone from a modern context, for people that maybe aren't familiar with Barry Windham, the guy that I thought he reminded me of watching these matches the most, Randy Orton.
I did on the last match that we watched.
The sort of the lean kind of physique, the bigger than they look, if that makes sense, like taller than they look, and then like just the smoothness and the gracefulness with which he does his moves, like I think Tim mentioned that it's the word glide. He like glides when he does his lariat, and when his body movement with his bumps is very theatrical and very like he moves like somebody that's much smaller than him, like a Brad Armstrong or somebody like that. But like that's the only guy that I can think of in a modern context that's like got the combination of size and smoothness with everything. It's not like Barry Windham's out here doing these innovative moves that no one's seen, but everything he does looks different from how everybody else does it, how he moves his body.
It looks great.
With his and you always hear that about Orton, about how smooth he is as a worker, and that's kind of what Barry comes off across in all of his matches. And this was like, you have one of the greatest tag teams of all time, Tully and Arn, without question, against 2 of the biggest single stars of that era, and certainly with regards to Barry, one of the best and most underrated wrestlers of all time. So this match was. I want to let Tim kind of have the main event here because it is his favorite WCW tag match. But like, to me, I think the fact that they didn't get a lot of time made it more memorable because they didn't go out there and wrestle it like a 20-minute tag match condensed into 9 minutes, if that makes sense. They went out there in terms of like, we're going to work it slow at the same pace that we would a 20-minute match. They go out and they work it balls to the wall. There's no in this match at all. It's just constant action. It's almost like a modern day tag team match, like a modern like Young Bucks match or something.
Mm-hmm. That's sort of where I was going to go with this, Greg. I would say if you're a fan who has not seen this and you've not seen a lot of Barry Windham, but you're a fan of something like Hangman Page and Omega versus the Young Bucks, which a couple of years ago, I can't remember which pay-per-view that was exactly, but like, you know, like five-star, legit five-star like tag team match, right? Mm-hmm. This would be like a 1988 version of something like that. So if you like that match, check this out. It's a complete sprint, which you did not see for this time period. And I have to assume that the reason that it goes, maybe 10 minutes tops, that's what it feels like anyway, is because, you know, the main event of this Clash of the Champions is Sting and Flair, you know, going 50 minutes. So everything kind of gets a little bit shortchanged beneath that match. So what you have here is probably a tag team championship match that on a normal card would go like 30 minutes probably, you know, because that's how it was done back then. But instead, we get a condensed version of that 30-minute match where it's, you know, maybe 1/3 the length of what it would be, but everybody still gets their same shit in, as you put it, Jenny. And I mean, look, I'm a fan of that kind of thing. You can say that it's lacking in psychology. Oftentimes it is, but I think in this case, they really did successfully take that model, that Southern tag team model, and condense it into a very successful 10-minute outing where you've got things like, you know, the hot tag, you know, the babyface heat segment, then getting the hot tag, the heels utilizing that quick tag formula, the crowd being nuts throughout all of it and being played like a fiddle. And of course the huge pop for the babyface win, and great symmetry too with that chaotic start leading to a very chaotic ending to this match. I love how they bookended it that way. And it's all just very convincing. You don't realize that, oh, this is really a short match because they've just been going all out. And there's no fluff. There's no fat in this match whatsoever. You know, at one point, the timekeeper calls, you know, 5 minutes in the match have passed, as you would often hear on these old WCW shows. And I'm like, Jesus. So within 5 minutes, we've seen Lex get his torture rack in. That was like in the opening minutes of the match. We've seen like a spine buster. We've seen that awesome diving lariat from Windham that he usually put guys away with back then. So it's like, holy shit, how much more are we going to see here before all is said and done? I mean, there just is so much packed into this, and yet it really does work.
What else made it?
It doesn't feel shortchanged at all. Go ahead, Greg.
Not at all. What else makes it seem modern is finisher kickouts, because
true.
DDT from Arn Anderson was a finisher. The spine buster from Arn was a finisher.
Legit finishers at the time, yeah.
Yes, Tully hits the slingshot suplex, and that gives.
Which he never got that move off, right? So when he did, because heels could never do their finishers back then, unless it was a jobber match, right? So the fact that like he actually does his slingshot suplex, and you know, Windham kicks out. That's a huge. No wonder this crowd was so out of their minds.
And it cannot be understated. It just cannot be understated. This is one of the loudest wrestling crowds I've ever heard in my life.
It's crazy.
It is that you would think that Stone Cold Steve Austin and 1980s Hulk Hogan were having a conversation. This is just an incredible wrestling crowd. To me, this is like, if you're one of those people that believes that crowd reaction is the predominant idea, live crowd reaction for wrestling matches, it's hard to find anything better than this because these guys took this crowd on a ride, and that crowd was there for all of it.
How do you feel about the finish? That was the only thing I was like, you know.
I liked it.
It's kind of weird to see a chair.
Yeah, you have to put yourself in the time frame that it happened in, because this was for better or worse, Dusty era WCW/NWA had a ton of interference and a ton of Horseman cheating, all to retain the title, or more often than not, cheating and getting caught and getting disqualified, or getting the match overturned because another referee comes in and sees what happened and says, well, no, that chair was involved. So the fact that this finally backfired on the Horsemen after all this time, because I believe it was at Starrcade 87, they had screwed the Road Warriors somehow on some similar situation involving interference that was later determined to overturn the Road Warriors winning the titles or whatever. But I'd have to go back and watch that to be sure. But point being, it was kind of the Horsemen getting their comeuppance for once, where, you know, the fans actually got the satisfaction of seeing the good guys win. Now, of course, this wouldn't last very long, but for one night, the fans got to see J.J. Dillon and his cheating ways backfire on him. So I actually like the finish.
One night?
Well,
it lasts longer than one night, but not.
It's not. We'll put it this way: it's not the Dusty finish where they you think you get the happy ending, and then the next night, the next show you go to or watch, they overturn it. Like this actually does stand. Spoiler alert!
One of their first title defenses, maybe their first title defense, against Arn Tully and Barry.
Yeah, that a rematch, and
they lose the titles, but and then we get heel Barry, but yeah. This is also the only of our matches where we get to see Barry work as a babyface, and that's one thing that is clear watching 80s Barry Windham is one of the best wrestlers of all time. There's no getting around it. He's just spectacular.
One of the reasons I picked a tag match, and I was surprised that one of you guys didn't pick another tag match. I kind of think of him more as a tag wrestler. Is that weird?
No, because particularly of the stuff that we've watched, because most of, and believe me, I did a lot of research for this episode, because the match I wanted to include on this show is not even available on Peacock
lame.
Have it. So what happened was Barry Windham in the 80s was more, he did have a prominent tag team in the WWF. We're sticking to the NWA. He was a singles guy more so than a tag guy. However, as doing this research, almost all of his great singles matches seem to happen on shows that aren't on Peacock, like for instance, Worldwide being the big one.
It's our conspiracy.
Worldwide. All these years later, Worldwide is still not on Peacock or the WWE Network or any other easily accessible place, and that's where the match that I wanted to put on, it was a match from early 1987 from an episode of Worldwide where him and Flair did the whole hour on Worldwide.
Oh, shit.
And it's one of the best matches I've ever seen. One of my favorite wrestling matches. I think it's as good as any of the Steamboat matches. It's amazing.
That match is awesome.
It was on the first, if you remember, Tim, it was on the very first Ric Flair DVD set they put out. And that's where I first saw it. I had never seen it before that. And it blew me away because I didn't view Barry Windham in that light. I knew Barry mostly from the 90s when he was good, but he wasn't like, one of the best guys on planet Earth or anything.
Right. The way that Ric Flair talks about Barry Windham, he says basically that they had countless what would be considered 5-star matches just up and down the road on house shows that nobody's ever going to see.
They have. I actually went and I found my DVD set, the Ric Flair set, to make sure what episode of Worldwide it was. And then I thought, and the name of the DVD, and I thought, well, maybe they have this Ric Flair DVD on Peacock, and they do, but they only have
the matches
portion. They don't have the matches, so I couldn't.
There was another one. Yeah, that's probably the closest you're going to get to what Flair talks about when he says they had so many classic matches, because there weren't a lot of them on television. There was that one. I know they also had one in the Crockett Cup,
which is also not on Peacock.
I think it's also that same year, 87, which is really good too.
Yep.
But that's really about it. I mean, maybe a random, WCW World Championship Wrestling back then, which, most of that stuff was, they would have matches, but it'd be set up for angles and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
and they have and if you go outside of WCW, they had a match in Championship Wrestling from Florida, I think, Battle of the Belts in 1996. That's great. But again, why is Worldwide not on the network? I don't know. Why is
I was screaming about this the other day.
Why is Crockett Cup not on the network? I have no idea.
Well, that used to be. That was they had some hidden gems from Crockett Cup on the old network, but I digress.
But anyway, point being, the reason you probably view him that way, Jenny, is in the 90s, he did become more of a tag team guy. He had a long tag team with Dustin Rhodes. He had a long tag team, well, maybe that was the main long tag team he had, now that I think about it. But no, him and his brother, Kendall, in the late 90s were a tag team for a while. The West Texas Rednecks, if you recall.
Oh, God, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff with Kurt Hennig.
Yeah.
Even before the team.
And then didn't he have a team in the WWF too, the with Bradshaw? The
new Blackjacks or whatever.
This is something we haven't even talked about this for this episode of the classic, one of the great sitcoms we can all recall of our lifetimes was How I Met Barry Windham. How I met Barry Windham was I'm sure I saw him in the NWA. I vaguely remember him with the Horseman when I was real little, but my first vivid memories are of him with his short-lived Widowmaker gimmick in WWF in 1989. I remember the vignettes for the Widowmaker, and that didn't last very long, obviously. And then the fake Sting and all that stuff. So it's totally understandable why you would view him as a tag guy, is what I'm long about getting to there.
How I met Barry Windham was through you saying Barry Windham all the time.
Barry Windham.
Barry Windham.
Listen, I went to Barry and I told him, look, Barry, I love your work, but you've got to quit masturbating in hotel rooms. Hey, I told him once, I told him 1,000 times. But he was reliable.
He was reliable.
That's the most important thing a talent can have, reliability. I told Barry to keep masturbating. I did. I respect Jim, but I told Barry that Jim was wrong. Your body. Do with it what you will.
Listen to woke Ric Flair over here.
Right.
Preaching body autonomy.
Maybe I should have flipped their roles. I don't know. In that little...
No, he's gonna team up with woke Bobby Eaton. Man, Barry Windham hotel room stories. This is not how I met Barry Windham, but it's taking me back to a story from Mick Foley's first book about just. It's really more of an aside than a story because there's not much to it other than there was one of those wild hotel parties, probably at like a Marriott, in the early would have been the early 90s because this is Cactus Jack. You got to figure if Cactus Jack and Barry Windham were around at the same time, we're talking like 93 at the latest, more than likely. So like 92, 93, one of these big hotel parties, somebody, I don't remember whom it was, dropped their keys, like their house keys, into a hotel toilet that was filled with, as Mick Foley put it, Jack Daniels diarrhea.
Oh, God.
Just keys right down in there. He said without blinking, without even hesitating, Barry just reached his hand in there, pulled the keys right out, handed them back to whoever who probably very gingerly took them. Didn't miss a beat. Didn't complain. Didn't sell it.
Do you think sell it? Black glove during that?
Why do you think that glove was black?
I mean, he made it sound like he was like elbow deep into that thing. Yeah.
One of the things that I hope that by the time we end our journey through WCW, we come to the solution to. I've always wondered since I first read Mick Foley's book and then over the course of what must have been 25 years since that book came out or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
shoot interviews and other wrestlers' books, there is an odd, I mean, almost eerie attraction, it seems, between pro wrestlers and shit.
Yeah.
Like actual human feces. Like there's
Decent.
there's a classic JR story of Brian Pillman coming to him with urgent news and saying, "I need your help, Jim. I need you to see this. You're not going to believe it." And taking him into the bathroom and showing him what JR describes as the longest uninterrupted piece of human fecal matter I've ever seen in my life.
God.
One day, folks, we will solve this mystery for you. We will solve the mystery why wrestlers are so attracted to poop.
You got Big Show shitting in Vince McMahon's private bathroom, proudly.
You've got Vince McMahon chasing Pat Patterson with a pair of soiled underwear.
Oh, yeah. That's a Kevin Kelly classic.
Is the answer is because guys are fucking gross? I don't know, just throwing that out there.
You probably just hit upon it. Notice none of these stories ever involve any of the women wrestlers.
I've never been shocked by any of these fucking stories. Like, yeah, it sounds like a bunch of dudes. Like, I don't, like, it's fucking gross.
Nobody could eat a sandwich backstage in the night.
I know. Like, I would not trust any wrestlers if I was hanging around with
I would have
those guys.
I wouldn't have eaten
no.
backstage after I'd heard one of those stories about X-Pac shitting in someone's sandwich or something.
Yeah, I mean,
I was like, no, I'm good. I'll just eat my tofu or whatever.
Mm-hmm. You can't do anything around wrestlers. You can't live around wrestlers. I mean, you can't breathe.
But one thing you could do if you were in the ring with Barry Windham, by God, is work with him.
Fuck yeah.
That's how good he was.
Right.
And that quality of performance brings us to my selected match. Unless we had more to say about this tag team classic.
No, go for it.
I think I'm good. It's awesome. It's everything you would want in a great tag team match. It's a great ramshackle team. This is another thing I love. These ramshackle teams versus the established tag team going over. That's always really cool.
It's kind of an early version. If you think about it, the time is about the same. The action is about the same. It's an early version of Sting and Luger versus the Steiners from a few years later.
Yeah. They didn't do that all the time. And this one, I mean, I'd put it up there with that. So, anyway, Greg, you've got our next pick.
Yes, and I will caution our audience ahead of time. I actually watched this match a week ago, and a lot's happened since then, so my brain's a little cloudy, so I may not be quite as up to detail on this match as I am with some of the other matches that we talk about. But my match is one that, since I couldn't find any of my Ric Flair matches I wanted to find for Barry, it was the one that came to mind in terms of one of the most memorable that I watched when I was a kid. Because I remember renting the VHS of Starrcade '88 and really renting it to see the Lex Luger and Ric Flair match, and then coming away almost remembering this match more because I had not. Again, when I was a kid, I liked Barry Windham and I thought he was good. But I always viewed him as kind of a second-tier wrestler, like a guy that was like Arn Anderson at that time, how I viewed him as a kid, which is he's kind of Ric Flair's lackey or whatever. And it really opened my eyes to how good he was at his peak, and especially that he could have been a top heel or a top babyface, but in this particular case, top heel. And this match is from Starrcade '88, and it is Barry Windham defending the United States Heavyweight Championship against what I assume to be a recent WWF export in Bam Bam Bigelow. Now, this is interesting for several reasons because my childhood memories are of Bam Bam in the WWF. My earliest childhood memories, because he was in the original WrestleMania video game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and did cartwheels and all that. And I always liked him because he had the flame suit and the flame tattoos on his head, just looked like a badass and a cool dude that was otherworldly almost. And apparently he jumped ship in '88 from the WWF to the NWA and got a shot here for the U.S. title. He even brought along his manager, the somewhat unique Sir Oliver Humperdinck, one of the great names in wrestling. And Barry, of course, is the United States champion as a heel. He had turned on his tag team partner, Lex Luger, earlier in the year, joined the Horseman, And Tim, I think that many would agree this is the best version of the Horseman. The Flair, Luger, or not
Yeah.
Flair, Windham, Anderson, and Blanchard with Dillon, J.J. Dillon, of course, in the corner. Barry has changed his look up. He's wearing all black now. He's got a black glove on his right hand because he now uses the same iron claw that his father, Blackjack Mulligan, perfected years earlier. And he's hated by the fans. He's part of the Horsemen. But as with Horsemen throughout the late 80s, there's a contingent of people that like him because the Horsemen were cool. So when Barry's introduced in this match, he gets boos, but he gets a lot of cheers too because the Horsemen were cool. They were just cooler than most of the rest of the roster. Of course, Bam Bam Bigelow's pretty freaking cool too.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got your classic. It's almost I would love to have seen what this match could have looked like in the other direction too, with Barry as the babyface and Bam Bam as the heel. I think that could have also been a great match. But the reason I picked this match is I remembered two spots in particular that never left my mind as a kid. I probably rented this when I was 9 or 10 from the local store that had some Crockett era VHSs that they would still rent out. And I remembered a spot where Barry Windham had sort of a semi-conscious Bam Bam on his feet and like holds him in place and like slaps his face in the most condescending way. Not to slap him to like hurt him, just to kind of like you would do to like a, oh my boy kind of slap. He goes and he gives him just the mother of all lariats.
Good God. Yeah.
And
stand-up spot.
Yeah, that I remember that from that first VHS watch when I was a kid. And then the other one was when he has him. It's so simple, but he has him in the Iron Claw. And I remembered this heel move my whole life, basically, where he's got him in the claw and he's just trash talking the fans. And I remember him saying, "He's mine, he's mine." Like, just I don't know what about that stood out to me as a kid, but like the idea of the confidence that this dude's so much bigger than him, like thicker than him. I mean, let's face it, Bam Bam looked like the tougher. If you had to go off of looks, he looks like the tougher guy. But Barry's so confident that this head squeeze is going to render him unconscious that he says he's mine. He's got complete control of the match, and he's so confident in a way that only really Ric Flair was at that time. And I remember those spots my whole life. And so in this match, it goes kind of the way you might expect it. It starts out with Bam Bam dominating the offense. Barry is bumping around the ring incredibly well. His body movement, and this gets into the Orton stuff too, but like his body movement is what makes him stand out. The way that simple bumps, he doesn't make look like simple bumps. He makes it look like something you'll remember. It makes his opponent look great. He's gliding around the ring even when he's getting tossed by Bigelow. He powders several times to go and get advice from J.J. Dillon, and he's trying to figure out a way to work around this massive man that's opposing him. The fans are eating it up, of course, and a lot of it is Bam Bam taking the offense to Barry, and then there's a turning point in the match where Barry takes full control, and this is actually what I thought was the most interesting portion of the match. As I mentioned earlier with the memories from my childhood, it's almost like they were keeping Barry strong enough to keep a possibility for him having a babyface run, because it's very rare that you would see a sort of a powerhouse babyface be vulnerable for this long in a match, and unless it was against Flair, or in this case against Windham, because Barry, he does that incredible lariat that we were just talking about, just completely lays him out, hits him with clotheslines, DDTs, back suplexes him, even builds up to a body slam spot. And that really is what stood out to me. That was a babyface spot. And Barry gets the body slam on Bigelow and then goes up and misses the flying elbow drop. And that allows Bam Bam to take control. The claw where basically Barry has him beat with the claw, but Bam Bam kind of stumbles into the ropes. They take a double clothesline over the top rope where they both fall and just take in particular, I thought Bam Bam took the worst of that, just took a stick bump onto the concrete and looked like he landed his back right on one of those television cables. That couldn't have felt good, especially with no pads at ringside.
Yeah.
That was rough. And then of course the big finish, of this match, which is I will admit I think there's two flaws in this match. One is the actual finish, which is it is a count out where Bigelow goes and charges Barry and smacks his head into the pole. He hit the pole, and Barry rolls in and gets the count out victory, which I don't have as big a problem with, honestly, because that's a nice way to get heat on Windham without making Bigelow too weak. Because, I think that with the fact that Bigelow had his own manager at ringside would have made it harder for the typical JJ interference to get pulled off. But the biggest flaw, I think, in this match, there's one spot in particular when Bam Bam makes his comeback and is taking control of the match. He does his, what I thought was his finishing move, which is the slingshot from the apron over the top rope, and has Windham beat. And the referee counts 1, 2, and Bam Bam stands up for no apparent reason and just points to the corner and goes up and tries another move and misses that one. So I don't know what happened there. Like I actually rewatched that spot today because I wanted to make sure I had it right in my mind. And I can't, for the life of me, figure out what was supposed to happen there or what the plan was for that spot. But
commentary did them no favors either with Jim Ross and Bob Caudle, who
they were both really confused as well. Like
they. A really good commentary team that'll happen, and they'll be just as lost as we are, but they'll try to smooth it over. In that case, both of them were like, "What happened? He had the man beat. What's going on?"
Hey, Jim, I don't understand. But
if that wasn't a botch, I don't know what is. Jim.
Bam Bam Bigelow must be a fucking moron. He had the title won, and he walks away like a dumbass.
I look forward to seeing that on Botchamania.
What the hell's Botchamania? I'll tell you about it after the show, Jim. It was very bad. That was the one downside of the match. But ultimately, I thought the match told a really good story. I thought Bam Bam did his end, of course, with his athleticism. But what the biggest surprise to me, Bam Bam, as impressive as he was athletically, he was not the Bam Bam Bigelow yet that he would be a few years later when he was supremely confident and really is a more natural heel, I think, anyway. This match, to me, was about Barry Windham. This was the Barry Windham show, and I think that's ultimately why I went with it, is that it's a great indicator of just how great he was at that time. And you could, if Ric Flair had gotten injured, you could have easily plugged Barry Windham into that world champion position and not missed a beat, because he's so confident and so sure of himself, and you can tell that in his body language throughout the match. It's tremendous, and Bam Bam does his part as well. Obviously, it takes two to tango. But man, I think this is a great, even though I wouldn't say this is a 5-star classic or anything like that, this is a great indicator of how good Barry Windham was. Which while it may be it may be the lesser of the three matches, but it is still a really good match, I think, and tells a great story.
What really struck me about this one is that despite, Barry being huge physically, and obviously Bam Bam is a giant man covered in flames, that it felt more intellectual of a match than any sort of big physical matchup. You called out the spots, that were good, but it really felt more of a battle of wits and wills, than it did can I just beat this guy physically? And I think about the things that you mentioned, like the little slap on the face, that he did, like you said, that wasn't to hurt him. He was just fucking with him. A lot of this offense that he does to Bam Bam feels like he's just fucking with him, a lot of the match. And then he would, like you said, break off and confer with JJ real quick. It was just very theatrical. It was in a way that I know all wrestling is, so that sounds really dumb when I say it, but it looked more like a performance than a wrestling match to me. And I don't.
Psychological.
Psychological. And I mean it in a good way. It was just very unexpected to me especially from Bam Bam, I don't really kind of like consider him intellectual wrestler, and I could be wrong about that, but he seemed like just willing to like go with whatever Barry was doing. But then something got fucked at the end. It was like he forgot he was not supposed to win the match. I don't know, like it's like but then again it sort of adds to that weird vibe that I felt like the match had.
Maybe Barry got into his head with his trash talk.
Maybe he did. I don't know. It was just, it had just this real slinky quality. And I'm trying to think of a way to say it, like not slimy, but just like a slow, not a long match, but just kind of a battle of wits. Anyway, I don't know if any of that hit home or made sense, but
Yeah. I think it was very much a heel psychology tour de force from Windham, very much in the vein of also a learning experience for Bam Bam, because Bam Bam only been in business for 2 or 3 years at this point. So he's very, very green still, very much still learning how to be a top level wrestler. And in this case, he sits under the learning tree, and Wyndham puts on a heel clinic of sorts.
Very much so.
Formula to the match. That's the other thing is the difference. I think this is not a knock, because Ric Flair is the greatest wrestler of that generation, but the difference is Wyndham didn't really have a formula. So if Ric Flair was working this match, it would probably have been a better match, but it would have been a Ric Flair match.
Right.
The off the top, the chops getting no sold and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And with Wyndham, this is different than I ever saw him wrestle, really. So I think you're right in terms of it's not exactly what you would expect going in.
And I like, you can see how, I don't want to say green, but just how sort of more inexperienced Bam Bam is. Like, because he's really good at bumping even now, but he doesn't take the hit part of the bump. Like, I could see, like, on a kick where it doesn't connect and then he falls off. He gets better at it, but you could see the mishaps in the match on his side. But actually I thought it was a little bit more charming. I don't know. And the big man climbs up on the fucking top rope and just fucking flings himself off the top. I mean, it's awesome.
No fear in Bam Bam Bigelow's wrestling.
No. He was just willing to go with whatever Barry was doing. I mean, you just kind of tell.
Interesting. Also, this bothered me also in the tag match at time. Not as bad, but there are times in this Crockett era where the camera will cut to the crowd or something random.
Yeah.
And in this case, I know what they did. They missed Bam Bam doing the cartwheel, because there's a spot where Wyndham fails, and Bam Bam would always do a celebratory cartwheel because that was kind of his signature at that time. And they cut to the crowd when he's doing it, and I'm like, damn it. Yeah. But nonetheless, yes, I definitely think you had a good analysis of it. It's a different style match for sure from what we're used to.
You know, going into this, I'm not sure I'd actually seen this match before, which seems impossible because I watched all of the Starcades like about 5 years ago for a podcast, unless it just like washed over me or I was just so out of it by that point. I don't know, but I had like no recollection of this match. So this was kind of a treat for me to see for what felt like the first time, whether it was or it wasn't. Really interesting, and Greg and Jenny, you both sort of alluded to it, like interesting heel face dynamics, both in terms of what you would expect in terms of just looking at these two guys and their body type. Like, it's more fitting that Bam Bam would be the natural heel against a babyface Barry Windham. But even within the framework of the match, there's some kind of role reversal type stuff. Or Greg, you talked about how Barry Windham gets kind of a hope spot building up to that body slam, which is very unusual for a heel. He also, for the first half of the match, like takes most of the offense. Like Bam Bam is just chewing him up. And you get to see some great offense from early Bam Bam Bigelow with like, he's doing really effortless gorilla press slams, and he does a really awesome backbreaker where he's got
Oh, yeah.
Windham across his shoulders in like a rack position and just drops to his knees.
I didn't realize they were doing that move in the 80s. I can't recall anybody do it in an 80s match, so that was cool.
You would think he would destroy his knees, of a man of that size, holding another man on top of his own weight, coming down like that, but pretty impressive. Yeah. And again, like the slingshot splash from the outside, if the idea in that sort of weird, sort of botched pin was that Bam Bam was not done with him yet. He wanted to dish out more punishment, right? Maybe that's how we kayfabe it. That's a heel spot, that's the heel getting overconfident and cocky and saying, "Oh, I'm gonna finish him with the whatever," right?
Right.
And this is babyface Bam Bam, and it backfires on him when he then goes up to the top rope for the atomic splash, misses. That's the heel thing to do. And here's where we see Windham come back, and he does make a great comeback, with that awesome lariat, of course the claw. Which, is there any worse finishing move? Is there any worse move period in wrestling than the claw?
No.
It's my favorite bad move, I think.
Okay, yeah, it's sort of like how everybody, we all have a favorite bad movie. That's a great bad wrestling movie.
I can't hate on that, because when I was a kid, I loved a move that is at least as bad as the claw, maybe worse, which was the old Kona Crush, the double head squeeze from Crush.
The double
head squeeze. Oh God,
squeeze.
not a double head squeeze.
A double head squeeze. Yeah.
To me, the joy in the claw is watching the person in the claw trying to figure out how to sell the claw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine how good a wrestler. I actually talked to Nick about this the other day. Imagine how good a wrestler Carrie Elway's stepdad character from Liar Liar would have been with his mask.
Good Lord.
What a pull.
I'm known for nothing.
I understood that reference, but
yeah, really.
Anyway.
What does it say about us?
Audience of three.
Yep.
But anyway, it's just great to see heel Barry Windham wrestle this match as like a much smaller man until he does need to make his comeback, and you're like, oh, okay, this is Barry Windham, an enormous human being. So yeah, he is gonna have some incredible offense here against this babyface who is utilizing to great effect his big fat guy offense.
Yes.
You love to see it. But yeah, the smoothness, he's so smooth in the ring, is on display here, just like in that opening tag match that we talked about. You know what? I think this is a very Barry Windham thing. A lot of guys, heel babyface, when they are having to sell, and it's a long sequence. Let's say it's a long heat segment. They'll just go into like wet noodle mode, right? Where they it seems like they can't do anything. They're just eating shit. They're kicking out of pins, but that's about it. They're just like, they can come up with, it's like all of the energy is just drained from their body, right? And I get that. I know that that's a legitimate way of working the crowd and, building up to the hot tag or, whatever sort of comeback that they're going to have. And we don't really get that with a Barry Windham. It always feels like, even when he's fighting from behind, he still has that tenacity. He still has that drive to everything he does. He's not just out there, a body, a broomstick, if you will, selling. He's always, fighting back against whatever it is. We saw it in that, in the tag match we talked about before. We see it here in this match. And, that's, I think, one of the subtleties that makes him really great.
And may have been he picked up from being mentored by Ric Flair, because Flair was good at, like, throwing little chops or punches even when he was on the selling end.
Yes. Yes.
Going on.
So here we go. We're 2 for 2. Another Barry victory here. And by the way, I don't even hate the finish to this match. I think it works for the reasons you stated, Greg. It does keep Bam Bam protected, but also he doesn't even look like a big dope. Even when he gets posted outside the ring, he recovers pretty quickly, right? He gets right back up and he rolls back into the ring. It's just a second too late. It's not like he's out there, he's knocked out and just gets counted out looking dumb, getting counted out like a dope. He
didn't take
just
bump. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Wyndham being that much more crafty as the heel, cognizant of where the ref is in the 10 count, and he makes it back in the ring at 9 or 9.5, and Bigelow recovering, fighting back, is just a step too slow, with his manager Harry Knowles of Ain't It Cool News, which is who I immediately thought of when I saw Oliver Humperdinck out there. But yeah. Anyway, like I said, 2 for 2 here on these Barry matches and Barry victories. This, he went into it the United States champion, leaves the match United States champion.
At some point, we're gonna have to do a match that involved Oliver Humperdinck's tenure as Big Daddy Dink.
Yeah, no doubt.
That's my next pick. Spoilers.
Wow. All right. We'll see if we can find 3 matches.
Yeah,
right?
no, right.
Okay, so we've had 2 matches here from 1988, which is an awesome year for Barry Windham. I could have easily chosen another one, I feel like, or just something else from the 80s, but I wanted to skip ahead after you guys had picked because, Barry has a pretty good early 90s run as well. I'm thinking of like his 92, which is, to your point, Jenny, mostly tag stuff. It's honestly kind of hard to find Barry Windham singles matches from 1992. He's primarily teaming with Dustin Rhodes, and if he's not, they're involved in like multi-man match type stuff against Dangerous Alliance. Of course, there's the great War Games. It's just
Wyndham versus Steve Austin, 2 out of 3.
That was one of my picks on the Steve Austin episode we did. So I would just say, had I not burned that off at the time, I probably would have picked that match here for this episode, because it's as much a Wyndham match as it is an Austin match, that 2 or 3 falls, which I thought was really good.
Mm-hmm.
If I do say so myself. But anyway, I kind of didn't want to do another tag match just because, I don't know, I just didn't want to. I just wanted to find like a good hidden gem kind of singles. And I don't know that it's really a hidden gem. It's just kind of a nice, solid match that people sort of forget about. And so what I came up with was from 1993. So we're kind of getting to the end of Barry's tenure here in WCW for a good while. It is from the Clash of the Champions, number 23. And this is at the Norfolk Scope, my neck of the woods, kind of. More Nate Mills' neck of the woods. Norfolk. And it is now.
Why is it called a scope? It's an arena.
Because all these Virginians with their halitosis, as Jesse Ventura would put together. Oh, man. Great commentary for this one. It's now Barry Windham, NWA heavyweight champion, going up against Too Cold Scorpio.
Oh, shit.
The Cold Man.
Go Barry Windham.
I know. Yeah, this is a real odd match on paper. Kind of a mismatch.
Strange.
Going into things. But I think it works. And Greg, maybe you can help me out. I've never understood the reason why they decided to strap up Wyndham with the NWA Heavyweight Championship.
It was a means to get it onto Ric Flair originally.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, right?
Except it didn't happen that way, of course. But yes, or did it? I can't remember. Maybe it did happen that way. Yeah. So the idea was they brought back now this was what doesn't make sense. They brought back the NWA World Title at like Starrcade, maybe 92. And I don't know if Ric Flair was even gone from the WWF by then, but
no, he wasn't. He lasts into 93.
Yeah,
because they do that loser leaves town match with
Percy.
yeah.
but they brought the belt back and they put it on Muda, the Great Muda, and Windham wins it from Muda at Super Brawl, I think.
Super Brawl, yeah.
And then but I'm pretty sure it was because they thought the natural story there was Windham and Flair, and they hadn't yet turned Windham. Windham, I think, turned at Starrcade 92 and turned heel, and then
because he had turned on Dustin towards the end of 92, so that put an end to their tag team. He'd kind of been teaming with heel Brian Pillman at the end of the year, and that didn't really go anywhere.
That's right.
So yeah, Flair comes back. Windham wins the title at Super Brawl 3. And so this is when you've got babyface Ric Flair, and they're putting the Horseman back together as more of a babyface unit with him and Arn. And, naturally, of course, they're going to be gunning for Windham. They're old running buddy. But Windham sort of rebuffs them and says, no, and boy, do they try to get this over. Yeah, the lone wolf, right?
Yep.
They kept pushing that on commentary throughout the match. He's a lone wolf. He stands only for himself.
And it kind of sucks for Barry because it does position him as just a transitional champion. He's really just there to get it onto Flair. He's not there to actually have a run himself. Because they're setting up Flair to win it, and then they want to do Flair and Rude, which they did over the course of the summer and fall, to mixed results, of course, but we've covered that on the show.
I guess I forget that. Well, I always forget that Flair and Windham had these sort of back-to-back matches that are like a year apart. So
same pay-per-view, Lamboree.
Yeah, sort of. So same time of year, right? Because Windham does drop the title to Flair at Beach Blast.
Oh, that's right.
And then he's out for a year because he's banged up, he's got bad knees or whatever. And by the time he comes back, he has another match with Flair at Slamboree in '94, which again is around the same time period. So it's like he was gone for the better part of a year, and then when he comes back, he's just fighting Flair again. So it's sort of weird. It feels like he never left, and then he comes back and does that match, and he's gone basically for good, until the late 90s with the Flair stuff again, and then the West Texas Rednecks and everything. So yeah, we're getting real close to the finish line here. So it's transitional champion Barry Windham, NWA heavyweight champion still, going against Scorpio. So we get kind of aggressive lockup to start things off here. Both guys tumbling into the ropes, and Windham just tries to intimidate Scorpio as, again, the lone wolf here, only to eat a drop kick. And he gets a little what for back from Scorpio on that exchange. So then Windham goes for a hammerlock and a short-on dragon twist, if you will, Greg. But Scorpio managed to wiggle out of that, pops off a scoop slam. So Windham's a little bit rattled here. He resorts to some knees in the corner and some chops, not the kind of wrestling chops that you're used to, but karate chops in the corner, which was an interesting choice. Gets a big lariat then into the opposite corner, and then goes for a blind charge. Scorpio, though, gets his legs up and takes Windham down in kind of a leg lace lariat, I guess you could call it, looking for a half crab attempt. But Barry then bails outside the ring. Scorpio whips the champion into the ropes, and Windham's looking for a clothesline on the rebound from that. Ducked by Scorpio, but Windham still catches him with a big right hand. Then goes up top for a huge clothesline with, again, smooth as silk. It looks like he can just, fly across that ring. Love it.
It's the way he pushes with his feet and his legs.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
It's like it was like he's a dancer or something. Like
graceful.
Graceful.
Already a battle of attrition between the lone wolf and, as Jesse repeatedly reminds us, the cold man.
The cold man, yeah. So we get now a body slam and a hanging vertical suplex from Windham, floats over into, which that move always looks so awesome when he would do it. Floats over into a pinning attempt, 2 off of that. The Scorp Man whipping Barry Windham across the ring, but then he totally eats shit on a dropkick attempt because Windham catches himself on the ropes. Comes back with a DDT, another move that we see Windham using a lot during this time frame, which it always looks unusual, right? When a guy that size pops off a DDT, you think of that as I don't know, like a smaller wrestler's move.
Yeah, it was the same DDT the Undertaker used to do, that running.
Exactly.
And I think it looked better than the DDT he used as his finish. Like
I do too.
I thought that Scorp. I actually thought this was the finish when he hit it. I thought, oh shit, Scorp didn't last very long in this.
Right. Well, Scorp is hanging on here.
This match
gets a desperation inside cradle, but Windham easily survives that. Comes back with a gut wrench suplex. Scorpio fires off a couple of rounds and then gets a flash drop kick, but Windham just runs him right over with another clothesline. Barry dropping Scorpio throat first now across the ring ropes, dumps him outside the ring, but Scorpio then slingshots himself right back into the ring and into, I don't know what to call it, but like a Des press. But he can't keep Windham down. Windham shrugs it off and comes back with a big Samoan drop, then a delayed belly to back suplex. Don't see that move very much.
Love that. Such a cool.
But looks just like everything. You know, just like you said, Greg, he does these like basic wrestling maneuvers, but in a way that's very like innovative to Barry Windham. So he makes basic things look really cool. Scorpio's still hanging in there, counters another suplex into a sunset flip, then hits a belly to back of his own. Windham, the hoists Scorpio up right to the top rope. He's setting him up for the superplex here, which he often used to finish guys, especially at this time period. Scorpio, though, manages to block it, and he gets that big sort of twisting splash that he does. He always gets a lot of hang time on that. Windham fights out of that pin.
Crowd bought that.
Yeah, they bid on that.
Yeah,
they bid on it. Scorpio catches Windham coming off the ropes with what then fans would recognize as a Frankensteiner. So perhaps move infringement there by Scorpio against Big Papa Pump. I don't know if I'd fuck with that, but in any case, it's not enough. We see a thrust kick into a victory roll by Scorpio, still pressing that offense, but Windham escapes. Scoop slam, and Scorpio then pastes Windham with a somersault splash, sort of like like a standing slingshot 450. It's another one of those moves you don't see anymore, but looks very cool here.
I don't know if anybody had ever seen it to that point on American television. That was wild.
Yeah. He follows that up with a missile drop kick. So really keep the momentum here in Scorpio's favor. He's on a flurry now. But when he attempts to shoot himself back into the ring from the apron, Windham just pastes him with a big right hand, nails him in midair. Scorpio's laid out, and that allows Windham to finish with that, what they call a leaping DDT. I guess kind of like the execution, but just sort of more awkward in execution. So
he drops to his knees instead of to his butt.
Yeah. So it looks a little, I don't know, weird. So anyway, your winner and still NWA champion is the Lone Wolf, Barry Windham. I mean, it's your basic sort of exhibition-y match. I mean, I know it's a championship match, but does anyone really buy that Scorpio is going to win it here? Not the type of thing they really did back then just to like pop a rating or something. But I think it, again, styles clash as though it may be, I think it kind of works in a weird sort of way because Barry Windham is very adaptable, and Scorpio is, I mean, a world travel wrestler. He's going to be game for pretty much anything, and they managed to put something pretty neat together. It's I mean, we're not talking any 5-star classic or anything, but probably better than you would think on paper, and perhaps better than it had any right to be.
Yeah. Complete style clash, but yet one that worked. Sometimes in wrestling, the most interesting matches come from the least, the on paper, the least compatible styles.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, you've got Barry Windham, who you think of as the classic 1980s NWA wrestler, and then you've got Too Cold, who was a wrestler most people consider to be 20 years ahead of his time, doing a style of wrestling at a level that was kind of certainly wouldn't be seen from a guy of his size until many years later with Rob Van Dam. So,
Yep.
on paper, you would think this is going to be ugly. This is going to be like Rey Mysterio Jr. versus 1986 Ric Flair or something, where it's going to be just a wild style clash. But instead, I think to both guys' credit, they adapt. I mean, it tells a clear story of Barry Windham as the veteran. He's the bigger guy. He's the champion. He controls the match, and Too Cold fights from underneath. But they also tell the story that Too Cold is so fast and so explosive and so innovative that, he keeps catching Barry with these wild things that he's never seen before, that none of us have seen before at that point in time. Like that slingshot 450 is one of those moves that, like, I don't even know how he did it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it
doesn't look natural at all.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it should even be possible, and yet he pulls it off with great success. And so, I think that was very impressive, and Wyndham adapting to Too Cold and working high impact, high paced style, coming off the top rope with a clothesline, showing he can fly a little bit too, which the commentary did a great job of pointing out. Which commentary was just excellent anyway throughout this match, very entertaining.
Yeah, you
And
get Tony and
a
Jesse. It's hard to top them. Yeah.
Yeah, a very frisky Jesse in this match. And, I thought that Barry did a great job controlling the pace and, letting Too Cold get his comeback when it was time and making people buy those near falls. Particularly, I don't think they ever really topped that first one where Too Cold hit that twisting splash. People really bought that as the finish. And that was really cool. A couple of takeaways from this match. Number one, like you with the Bam Bam match, I'm not sure I've ever seen this before. I've heard about it.
Okay.
It got a little bit of buzz at the time, but I don't remember ever seeing it until watching it this time. And so I was quite happy about that. Takeaway two is that Barry, even though he was considered physically a little bit past his prime by this point because of the knee injuries and things of that nature, he was physically, you can see he's put on a little bit of weight at this point. He's not like out of shape or anything, but he's thicker around the midsection. And, yet he can still go. And this is a great example of probably one of his last real standout singles matches, I think.
Yeah.
And then, and it's nice to see. It's just amazing to think about if they could have had today's medicine and today's treatment methods, how much more he could have gotten out of his career. But then, the other takeaways are, because I don't know when the next time is, we'll get a chance to talk about him. Too Cold Scorpio, man, he was over. That entrance music, as dated as it was for 1993, that crowd was.
People were into it. Yeah,
Hell
they
yeah.
were.
He comes out. People. I was 8 years or 9 years. No, I was still 8 at that time. And
They knew the dance. They had the whole thing. They had the whole number down.
I used to do the Too Cold Scorpio dance all the time around our apartment. I was a big Too Cold fan because he was doing cool stuff and he seemed cool. He had the music with the ladies screaming and all that stuff. And it was good. It was good stuff, pal. And he was over. And I think Too Cold, in my mind, I always thought, even when I was a kid, I always thought they didn't do enough with him. I didn't understand all the intricacies of wrestling at the time, but even I was a kid, I was like, where's Too Cold? Why don't they do more with him? Cause he was over and he had all these cool moves. He was a really good wrestler. And he's another example of a guy that WCW had that was really young and innovative, and they kind of didn't do much with him. outside of the tag ranks. And I think this was probably in some ways, his crowning moment as a single in WCW, was getting the spotlight against Windham for the NWA title. And I really think watching this match, he showed he belonged. I think they could have gotten something out of him, at least as like a U.S. title level guy, at the time. But nonetheless, he was really cool. And, I was glad you picked this one because this shows a later era Barry Windham match, but yet illustrates what made him such a good and smart wrestler, while also showing us an opponent that we don't get to talk about nearly enough. I'm sure Jenny talks about him more on the ECW shows, but like,
Right.
his WCW run was really good too for what it was. It's just he didn't get enough prominent spotlight to get a chance to show it all the time. But if I remember watching from the weekly shows at that time, it felt like every week he was debuting some move I'd never seen before. And he was legitimately one of my favorites in what was a down era for WCW.
Well, if you like Too Cold Scorpio, then I would suggest you tune into ECW, because when he debuts in ECW, he, I think it's like 94-ish or so, and he's there for a couple of years. And, you get a good amount of Scorpio doing crazy shit and being crazy. Like his promos are indecipherable a lot of times.
Yes.
He just goes, and like does that goofy laugh a lot. He also continues on the trend that he does at one point in this match where he can cover for a 2 count or a 3 count, but realistically a 2 count, but he don't. And it always bugs me. It's a thing that Scorpio does in all of ECW, is be really good in a match, do all this amazing stuff, have a guy down, and not cover his ass. And it's so infuriating. And when I saw him do it in this match, I'm like, what the fuck? He's doing it already. It's like a whole total thing of his. Like, for me, even above, like, his high flyer stuff, is that infuriating thing that he does. But that being said,
it's almost like he wants to get his shit in, but keep it protected at the same time. So
it's weird.
He doesn't go for a lot of covers off of the big high spots, because it's like, well, if the guy kicks out, then that's just a worthless spot, right? But it's like, maybe you shouldn't do so many. It's like, no, man, you're not gonna stop me from doing all my cool shit.
It's interesting because I always kind of think of him as like a spiritual predecessor to RVD, and RVD always did that work by having a character where his gimmick was that he was so cocky that he cared more about posing for the camera than he did about actually winning the match.
Yeah, that's how Scorpio gets too. But like in this, it was good to see him like more focused, because in ECW, he's goofy a lot of time. I mean, and he has some serious matches, but even within them, he gets, I don't know. It's like he pulls out his big moves and then he needs to walk around the ring for like 2 minutes because he gets just gassed by. So he was like kind of keeping up with Barry, a lot more in this than I'm kind of used to seeing him, which I understand. Like in the timeline, this is before all that. So anyway, I like Barry in this because he looks villainous with that goatee. I really, with his super blonde hair and then his dark goatee, I don't know,
it works for you.
It really does. And how brightly lit this scope is. You can see everything. Like, he is just absolutely covered in sweat. Like, it's just like dripping off of him. Everything's just visible in this space, and like you could see like to the nosebleeds. I don't know. I was kind of distracted. Like, I need some darkness in this. Anyway.
Well, most of those shows are so damn dark. I mean, our first 2 matches we talked about, you could maybe see the first few rows lit up, but that was it. I mean, the rest of it looked like it took place in an abyss. The way that those
that's the way I like my wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of do too.
Yeah. Floppy arm, damn Nick Patrick always takes away from a match too. But
One thing about Nick Patrick that bothered me in this match, I noticed it a lot of times in his match. I'm not quite as anti-Nick as you are, but because I think he has his place. But I will say it always feels like it takes the crowd a few near falls to catch up to his weird cadence.
Yes, it does.
It always looks like he's already counted to 3 when he's
yes.
Because he doesn't count. Every referee I've ever seen almost in wrestling, when they fall to the mat, they count that first slap as the 1 count. He doesn't. He goes to the mat and hits his hand down there, and then he picks it up, and then he begins to count. And it always throws people off in the audience.
How is that
allowed? He says the 1 as he's basically about to hit the 2, and you're like, wait, is he on 1 or 2 and then it's like, okay, I guess of all refs to be a good pick to blow the finish for Starrcade or whatever, the whole controversy and that, did Hogan pay him off or not? Who would know, because his cadence was always so weird.
Yeah, jacked up. Yeah.
Who paid for the plastic surgery?
Who paid for the tennis elbow?
But I liked the kickouts in this one. It was very much a Tim match, I would say. And like you guys said, the styles, it's not really a styles clash. It's just more I mean, I think Barry's pretty adaptable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not saying he could fly like Scorpio, but he gets around, he can move around in the ring. So
he's incredibly agile for a man of his size.
The finisher, pretty sick to me. Pretty slow build, but a pretty great match. The first couple minutes, I wasn't expecting to like it for whatever reason, and then it won me over.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely one to watch if you haven't.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. A nice kind of reminder from Barry Windham, I think, that he could still go out there and on any given night put on a clinic.
I will say that this late period Barry Windham with the goatee, more villainous, yes, I will grant you, although looks a little bit too much for my liking to the snowman at the beginning of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The narrator, basically.
Yeah, yeah, Burl Ives, yeah.
Yes, yeah, looks like the Burl Ives snowman. But that's just me with
my God. Oh my God. What's scarier than that motherfucker? I mean, really.
I know.
He was I want to know why this guy didn't involve himself more directly, because he's sitting there telling us about all this terrible shit that Rudolph and his family went through, and he's standing there just laughing about it, doing his little King of Jingling songs and stuff.
He seems like a real son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Why don't you go help? Why don't you go tell Santa Claus he's being a dick?
Look, he's a bystander. He just reports on things.
I know I was a reporter, but by God, if I saw somebody in strife, if I saw somebody struggling like that, you have to go over there and say, "Hey, man, Santa Claus, look, you've lost weight. Maybe you're letting it get to you, and you're being a dick."
See an adolescent reindeer being bullied for his sexuality. I mean, his red nose. And
exactly. And
it's only natural that you step up and do the right thing.
I mean, and you're a snowman, for God's sake. Your only purpose in life is during the Christmas season, so do something is all I'm saying. Make yourself Burl Ives. If that even is his real name. Yeah. I bet his real name was like Andres Van Gulik. Anyway, Burl Ives. Come on. Ugly story.
Oh, boy. So that's Barry Windham. I'm very satisfied with my pick of Barry Windham. And to hear other wrestlers talk about Barry Windham, it's almost this like jealousy mixed with frustration. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, Greg, but there was like, God, the guy was so good. He could have been so much more. And they talk about how, he was sort of undermotivated in comparison to other wrestlers and just such a natural at the sport of professional wrestling. He just sounds like one of those guys who found the one thing or a thing that he was just incredibly gifted at. And I mean, yeah, you could train to get better, but like I don't know, it's one of those things where he just had such such a knack for it that
it came easy to him.
It just came, exactly. It came
and that's
easy to
the Randy Orton comparison I make.
And so when something comes that easy to you, it's almost like, why would you take it that seriously?
Mm.
You know, it's like, well, I don't know what the big deal is. It's just wrestling, right? Where guys will train their whole lives to get as good as Barry Windham is just walking in off the street kind of thing, which I know is not the case, but it's just no amount of training was going to make Barry Windham better than he just already was. He just had it. He just had it down.
At such a young age that it's hard to go anywhere from there. Like what could 1988 Barry Windham have improved upon? What could he have gotten better at?
Yeah. What's he going to get better at? Yeah.
Like he was a pretty good promo. Like
I was going to ask about promo because I didn't get to see him talk at all.
Yeah, no, he wasn't Ric Flair. Nobody was.
Right.
He wasn't Arn, but he was pretty good. He was a pretty good promo by the late 80s and early 90s. Like he could be convincing and make you think that he was an evil bastard. I think he was a little bit better heel promo than he was a babyface promo, but he was not bad at that either. I mean, I think Barry was a very capable promo. To me, anyway.
He's no worse than like a Lex Luger, you know?
No,
absolutely.
What? Absolutely. In fact, probably better in many ways. So
yeah, I mean, certainly. And he came along at a time when you didn't have to be a good promo. That's what managers were for. So
So in the course of in Peacock's brilliant not letting us have timestamps in the damn videos, I had to go through most of this show to get to this. And along the way, I saw one of the worst promos I've ever seen in my entire life from Steve Dr. Death Williams. Anybody out there that wants to watch this match that we talked about from the Clash 1, y'all got to watch this Dr. Death promo. It is, I can't even describe how bad it is. It's awkward. It's painful to watch. Like you watch it, and you know how sometimes you see something that's just so awkward and it makes you uncomfortable to watch because it's so awkward? That's this. Like he is dying out there. And Bob Caudle's trying to interview him, and he's not doing anything. Bob's just like, you know what? You're on your own, pal.
Yeah, Bob's not helpful at all.
And I like Bob, but good gosh, man, he's not helping Doc at all because Doc is just dying on the vine here. He says, at one point, he says a sentence that's not a sentence, really. They're almost not English words that are being said. He said, Dusty, my friend, I want to tell you that all there at your, when you were Ric Flair, I'm coming for you. I'm coming hard. And
classic.
Bob, I want to tell you one more thing, Bob. He said, I'm going to tell you one more thing like three or four different times. And it's a horrible babyface promo. So, yes, Barry Windham, by that standard, was top tier when you're looking at that. And then Nikita does a promo later on that's better than that. But,
I saw that one. Yeah,
but also you can barely understand what he's saying. So. Because he's trying to do the Russian accent, and it's just
God, I can't stand Nikita Koloff promos.
Oh man, so bad. So Barry was good promo, and in the ring, I mean, it's like there's not much he can get any better at. He sells great, he bumps great, he does he like we said throughout the show, he moves with gracefulness that belied his size. He had great size, his offense looked great. I mean, he could play babyface or heel. He just peaked early, and I can imagine it's hard to stay motivated when you know how good you are. And also, with maybe this plays to that, he always kind of got pigeonholed a little bit as that, no matter how good he was, no matter how great he was, he always had Ric Flair right there, who was the gold standard of wrestling at that time. And so was he ever going to get a chance to really be the guy? Particularly when they had Sting and Luger, who were the body guys that were getting the big pushes as baby faces at that time in wrestling. So Barry kind of, I think, was looped into being a heel. And if you're going to be a heel, I think his chance would have been if he had avoided the sort of, he and his dad got into legal trouble in early 1989, which kind of led to him departing the NWA, and then he goes to the WWF and is the Widowmaker. If he had stayed in the NWA, I definitely think he would have had a program with babyface Ric Flair. So Windham would have been one of his top challengers here.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
And might have even felt so. But yeah, a lot of what ifs with Barry's career. But even with everybody saying the things that they say, they all agree that he's one of the best. Flair constantly talks about how great he was, and Arn talks about how great he was, and it's obvious. It's not one of those deals where you have to kind of look for. Why do people think he was that good?
Mm-hmm.
Look for it. It's just obvious when you watch him because he's a natural. Everything about him is a natural in wrestling. Never had to be a big steroid guy. Never had to. He didn't have to take a lot of the shortcuts that guys had to take in those days because he was just that damn good.
Very well said. Who's up next for our picks?
I believe it's gone around to my turn now.
I believe that's right.
And I am going with a timely pick in some ways. A gentleman recently announced that he will be retiring in the near future. He actually is planning on retiring next year. He somewhat oddly announced his he's going to be having 5 more matches in his career. And anyway, no, it's not Ric Flair. It's another gentleman that's going to be retiring next year who had some interesting matches in WCW, and that will be the man from the Far East, the mysterious Great Muta.
Great Muta. All right. Surprise pick.
Surprise choice. Yes.
I like it.
He's getting. I saw him in the news saying that he's getting ready to retire next year. Have his last series of matches, and I found myself randomly on an afternoon a few weeks ago watching an old episode of WCW Saturday Night from 1992, and I watched him have a match, and I was like, man, we need to do him on the show. We need to talk a little bit about him. It's a different type of performer and character than we've talked about. So
looking forward to that.
You forget how big a star he was in WCW. Late 80s.
Yep.
Very unusual for the time period, but he was right there with the main eventers of that scene. I mean, hanging in there. So,
all right.
Very interesting pick. That will be an education for me. I have not seen a ton of Muta, so I will enjoy it.
Decided to learn more. Oh God.
More about Muta.
Also, he still wrestles like Amy, like 85. How is he retiring now?
Yes, basically he's had Terry Funk knees for 20 years.
Oh shit!
Too.
Right.
He was
broken down in like the late 90s. Yeah.
He was one of the innovators of the moonsault, and so doing the moonsault every night for 15, 20 years ruined his knees. So by the late 90s, he could barely get around, but he changed his style completely and stayed relevant in the early 2000s to mid 2000s. And now in recent years, he's just been kind of having awkward old man matches, but
nice.
But he's still going somehow. He's tough some bitch, I guess. But
all right.
Yeah, he's stayed relevant in Japan, and even as recent as 2000, he was making spot appearances in WCW and getting action. So.
Well, until we get to that show, Tim, is there anything that you're making in the meantime that we can listen to?
Anything I'm making?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm making miracles every month with you, Jenny, and with our friend Jacob Williams, and that is on PTB NXT, the monthly PTB chrono rewatch. We're in the year 2015, coming up on our next big takeover outing that's going to see Sami Zayn defending the NXT championship against his old friend Kevin Owens.
Can't wait for that.
I just like to see two old friends can have a sporting fair matchup with.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it'll be a very respect-based match, no doubt, based on their feud to date. So check out PTB NXT. That is right here on Place to Be Nation Wrestling, where you're hearing this show. You can also, this is on a very different note, but if you're a fan of teen drama, 90s style, check out 9021 No-So. That is a chronological rewatch, not of wrestling, but of the great primetime drama of the 90s. That is with myself and JT Rosero. This has its own dedicated feed now. So we've been doing the show, for some time. We've basically finished the first season of Beverly Hills 90210, which is quite the feat for JT and myself and all of our great guests along the way. Thank you, Jenny, for being one of them. Greg, we're going to get you in.
Yes.
So that was part of the North-South Connection podcast network, our affiliates, which you'll hear more about here shortly. But we decided to spin it off into its own thing. So you'll find exclusive to just 90210 So in your preferred podcatcher app, look for it, subscribe. You'll find our entire back catalog. There's no paywall or any of that bullshit. Who do we think we are? So yeah, subscribe to that, and new episode every 2 to 3-ish weeks. Yeah. And you can find me on Twitter. I am at Cyke68, CYKE68 on Twitter. Greg, have you got anything what have you been working on? And I know you've been working, but what are you working on, Greg?
What I've been working on is a lot of numbers and figures and sheets and boring things that no one else would ever be interested in. Also, my tan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
obviously.
Right. That's a lie. I can't get tans. All I get is burnt.
Oh, I can't either.
It's pointless for me. I had a chance to go to Chicago recently, and I got to alongside my hard traveling fanboy companion Nick Duke. We went to the AEW New Japan Pro Wrestling Forbidden Door pay-per-view, and that was fun.
Nice.
That's among the most fun I've ever had with Forbidden Door.
Oh,
and
wow! Okay.
It was great. I had a great time, and Chicago was a nice place to visit that I wouldn't want to live. Too many people. It's a big city.
Yeah, it's got that big city feel for sure. So
yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff there. The pizza was awesome. Lots of I probably took a few years off my life, and that's fine.
yeah,
so
worth it.
And yeah, other than that, I'm not really doing much of anything. I watch wrestling for fun sometimes too, outside of our podcast, and that's good most of the time. Sometimes, occasionally. And I've been watching some early WCW Saturday nights, which are fun. From like '92 or whatever. And Kip Allen Fry, I have taken a liking to because of his. I don't know. There's something about him. He just looks unusual, but like he's very uncomfortable with the idea of being the president of the wrestling company.
Why am I the president of this company?
Yeah, so that's been fun, and seeing some of the celebrity guests that come on to like guest host it, like Ricky Rockman and the guy from Alabama, the lead singer from the band Alabama at one point.
And seeing the people, just looking at the people in the crowd is a real treat in and of itself with those early Saturday nights, I feel. I mean, God bless them. Those are some people who just love watching some wrestling. I don't know how else to put it. They, shall we say, real salt of the earth.
Absolutely.
And
they love chanting. I mean, I would say more than breathing. They love chanting, "Whoop, there it is."
Yep.
It's very, very powerful.
And they love to hate Paul E. Heyman.
That New York piece of trash, Paul E. Heyman. But yes, so I do that. But anyway, you can read a lot about these and other ramblings on my Twitter account, GPhillips865TU. That's GPhillips865TU, where I talk about primarily wrestling stuff. There's other stuff too, but it's mostly wrestling. And sometimes in my free time, I like to take the lyrics to famous or non-famous songs and change them into Jim Ross speak. So
nice. You got that going for you always.
Always.
We love that for you.
If you're a salt of the earth type person who likes to watch wrestling, maybe you'll listen to some of these podcasts we got here on the Place to Be wrestling feed, like Highway to the Impact Zone, Through the Looking Glass, With This Ring, NWA Saturday Special, PTBN's Main Event, and of course the Place to Be podcast. They are on like 605 episodes or so. So listen to all of those here on the feed along with my stuff. It can be found on the North-South Connection on Wednesdays. All the shows that I make are on there. So every Wednesday you'll get like a Freak Out Driving, Weird About Pluto, Talk'n Pop, The Journey Through Infinity. I also do the Extreme Three-Way Dance over there, and that is every 2 weeks. Going through the history of ECW, and that's a fantastic podcast. You should probably listen to it. I think that's it, and thank you for listening, and we will see you next time with the Great Buddha.
You know I'm talking about a Barry Windham.
Well, he's smoking, ain't joking.
No true words were ever spoken.
Because higher than fire.
Mean ass snake and top was my wild.
People will come bouncing around.
When they hear that old Barry's in town.
All the girls are getting dressed to kill.
You know the big cowboy shoots some thrill.
His daddy was a fighter, his brother is too.
The three of them together make a mighty crew.
Known to use his feet, known to use his fist.
But don't forget the superplex hilarious.
Well, he's smoking, ain't joking.
No true words were ever spoken.
Because higher is on fire.
Here's the mean ass snake and tough as my wire. Yeah! You don't want to step in the ring with a 6'6" Texas fighting machine.
Well, he's smoking, ain't joking.
No true words were ever spoken.
Because higher